Different women across a host of different countries all have that face. In the 90s and before, beauty standards were rampant, but cosmetic surgery lived in the shadows. If a leading lady got a bit of Botox, you weren't really supposed to know. But today, influencers have built entire careers around their cosmetic routines and how they look on camera. From contouring and fillers to rhinoplasties and tummy tucks, cosmetics haven't just been accepted, they've become aspirational. So here's a question. If we're spending 2 to 3 hours every day scrolling past perfect smiles, perfect skin, and aesthetic lighting, what is that doing to our everyday perception of beauty? And more importantly, what does it mean for modern day relationships? Well, let's talk about it. I'm Sam, and this is The Connection Room. If you're not chronically online, you're probably wondering, what the hell is Instagram face? The term started circulating in the mid-2010s. Journalists noticed that different female influencers started to sport a specific look. This look included perfectly smooth skin, overlines or filler-enhanced lips, high sculpted cheekbones, and a narrow contoured nose. You may remember this as the same time period where Kylie Jenner's face started to change from this into this. The truth is, the algorithm promotes whatever holds your gaze the longest and drives the most engagement. Over time, certain facial proportions and makeup styles proved extremely effective at doing that. This led to something I call the cosmetic convergence effect. One woman posts a look, it performs well. Other influencers adopt those features, and once it dominates the feed, it becomes our baseline. But the thing to remember is that high online representation doesn't equal real world prevalence. When we peer into that glowing screen, we're not just looking at reality. We're gazing at what has been curated by an algorithm in order to keep us glued to the app. So you might be asking, what does all that have to do with our relationships? Well, before we were all living inside our phones, attraction operated in bounded social fields. Put simply, you met people through community. Attraction came from someone that you knew or inside of a place that you frequented. I've always loved that word. It makes me sound so very cultured, frequented. Anyway, you didn't swipe into someone's life. You were introduced. And if you clicked, it happened inside a web of shared accountability. If you were dating someone, you saw them and their family around town. That exerted social pressure on couples. It's way harder to ghost someone if your mum sees their mum at church every Sunday. So romance wasn't detached from community. It was embedded inside of it. In this environment, there was no potential to scroll for alternatives. You couldn't just delete your profile and pop up again with a new username. If you were a dork, you stayed a dork until you underwent a meaningful transformation that had been witnessed by members of the community. This did two things. It slowed down partner switching and it increased investment. Because when options feel limited, it incentivizes you to work harder on trying to repair your relationship. Dating apps and social media in general have ripped us from this environment and excised romance and dating from local accountability. Attraction is now dispersed across a multitude of countries, and everyone is being compared to a pristine manufactured look. The sociologist Pierre Bourdieu talked about a concept called social capital. Put simply, it was the idea that status operates like currency inside of communities. And in the online world, beauty has become capital. In embedded communities, a person's attractiveness was assessed alongside their personal reputation, their overall character, and what they were attempting to do with their life. It wasn't just a case of having devastatingly good looks. Your attractiveness came from how respectful you were to people and how funny or captivating you were at social events. The attraction was not filtered through the sole prism of how you looked. But now, oh boy, What you see first is everything. If I don't earn your attention in the first 10 seconds of this video, you're gone. This turns beauty from being a piece of a person's biography into a standalone headline. What makes this worse is we aren't just getting exposed to more faces, our reference group has exploded. Before, you were comparing yourself to 30 or 50 people in your social sphere. But now, it's worldwide, baby. You're competing with millions of professionally or surgically optimized faces. In some cases, both. People are using color theory, high-end lighting, and going under the knife to compete with each other. Even I have to set up my lights and use my best camera to be beautiful because aesthetics are important. And in this game, the correct aesthetics don't just get you romantic opportunities, but income as well. Because if you can make it to a point where you're not just attractive, but your 2.5 million followers attractive, that has the potential to change your life. So then it begs the question, if attraction is being gamified, how are we supposed to find intimacy? Most men don't wake up demanding Instagram face, but we're not immune to social conditioning either. Now, before men start clapping and saying, "You tell them, Sam," the more time you spend scrolling, the more your brain is being transformed by what you consume. This is called perceptual adaptation. When you're repeatedly exposed to the same visual stimuli, it shifts your baseline. What once looked striking starts to look normal, and what used to look normal can begin to feel underwhelming. It's an absolutely crap place to be because today attraction is being pulled away from real life chemistry into what is essentially a person's best hits for their face. And let's keep it a buck. Men have become exposed to hypermasculinity, luxury signaling, and embracing cosmetic surgery. I know so many men over 35 who are getting into jiu-jitsu. In 2016, there were roughly 10,000 practitioners in the UK. Today, it's sitting around 40,000. And while I love that for them, it is important to point out that this trend just hasn't come out of nowhere. And even more interesting, it may have actually come from just one man miles away from here. But this means that both sexes are incrementally optimizing upwards at the same time. And it's increasing our dissatisfaction with anything that smells like normality. Now, I'm not a tiptoe around the edges type of guy, but I do want to have a nuanced conversation here because whilst it is true that men are becoming ensnared in this trend, this is one that hits women and especially young girls harder. Across history, women have carried more scrutiny when it comes to their appearance. At the same time, writers like Naomi Wolf have argued that beauty standards don't just reflect preference. They function as a form of social control. That means that two pressures exert themselves on women simultaneously. Firstly, women face greater selection pressures based on their appearance. And secondly, the modern beauty industry sustains and amplifies those standards because the insecurity of women is profitable. The less attainable the ideal, the more products can be sold in the pursuit of it. And for me as a father of a young girl, it's kind of a terrifying realization because young girls log on and what do they see? They see that attention flows towards their facial features and their bodies. When algorithms reward physicality ahead of the way you sing, bake, or do math, it puts a whole lot of pressure on women, not just to conform to beauty standards, but worse than that, it can nudge them into sexualizing themselves for likes. Because this isn't just about beauty standards, it's also about incentive structures that reward women for a singular way of expressing their femininity. And I know some women will be thinking, hold on a minute, why is the burden always handed back to us? And I say, fair question. Because I'm not gonna pretend that I don't see groups of men on every woman's post sexualizing or making comments about how they look, no matter how modest, how brilliant or accomplished these women are. So let me be explicit here. This conversation is not meant to be an indictment of women. Shaming women showing off their new BBL on the gram has never got a woman to say, you know what, Alpha Wolf 229? You've opened my eyes to the error of my ways. That's not how influence works. If we want to get back to our bounded social fields, this is also about men developing some attention discipline. If we're being true and honest, men fuel a lot of the machine that we claim to hate. Entire online empires exist because male attention funds them. OF would be bankrupt if men did not have subscriptions. You cannot condemn the supply while secretly financing it. The antidote then isn't outrage and denigration. It's learning how to restrain your visual diet, how to curate your feed deliberately and stop binging on content that turns women's bodies into a flesh parade, even if they are the ones uploading it. Because algorithms only show you what they think will keep you scrolling for longer. It doesn't care about your marriage. And it doesn't care about your daughters or your sons. It cares about keeping you online so that they can charge advertisers more. So whether you're a man who feels fatigued seeing the same type of woman pop up on your feed, or you're a woman exhausted from constantly having to compete in a visual marketplace you never asked to enter, this only shifts when we become intentional about what we consume. The algorithm does not care about our relationships, at all. So if we want better connections, we're going to have to retrain our eyes, or at least go outside. Or don't. Either way, my name's Sam, and until the next time, make some room.